Hello guys and welcome to Witchcraft Criminal History. How are you doing today? Hopefully you're doing well. Well, we are doing a crime video. Yay! I know you probably, if you've seen my recent update video, you know I'm going to Port Arthur, and I thought it seemed that I haven't done a crime video recently, I should do another one. Alright, so I am doing it on Martin Bryant. And if you guys may or may not know, Martin Bryant was the perpetrator of Port Arthur massacre. Like I said in that video, I remember the Port Arthur massacre. I was 11 years old at the time when I heard about the massacre in Port Arthur. And sadly, to this day, people know more about Port Arthur know more about Port Arthur through the massacre than its historical heritage, which is really, really sad. Now that ground has already been soaked and drenched in blood. Martin Bryant just added to the fire, or just added more to the pool of blood. Alright, so let's get to it. Well, Martin John Bryant was his name. His middle name was John. He would be what I would call a spree killer. Even though a lot of people say that he's a mass murderer. However, he did move. Although it was only once, and majority of his murders happened at Port Arthur. He actually killed prior to it, and he moved. Spree killers, as I said in one of my earlier videos on the classifications, that, spree killers, they kill, move on. Kill, move on. And Martin Bryant did exactly that. He killed, then he moved on. He killed, then moved on. Then he killed again. So he is a spree killer. And he's one of the worst murderers in Australian history. Alright. Martin Bryant was born on the 7th of May 1967 in Australia. He was born in Hobart in Tasmania. He was the first son of Maurice and Carolyn Bryant. Although he grew up in Lee Valley, most of the time he actually was living at Carnarvon Bay in Tasmania. And when he was a child, he was actually been interviewed as a child because he got injured playing with fireworks. And they actually asked him, "Are you going to do this again? Are you going to play with fireworks?" And he goes, "Yeah, sure, I'm going to keep doing it." And they said, "Haven't you learnt your lesson?" And he goes, "Yeah, but I'm still going to do it." Because Martin Bryant has an intellectual disability. So he has lower than normal intelligence. However, back in those days, people with intellectual disabilities or any form of disabilities, they pretty much, weren't, really recognised. And later on in his life, Martin Bryant was diagnosed of being on the spectrum or having autism. During his school life, he was a victim of bullying, and he was also very, very aggressive at school, so he was also getting involved in a lot of fights. And he would also sell rabbits to his next door neighbours as well when he was growing up. And as he grew up, he was pretty much a loner, which is a normal thing for people with autism. And he met 54-year-old Helen Mary Elizabeth Harvey, who was an heiress to the Lotto fortune. She regrettably, or unfortunately, was killed in a car accident. Martin Bryant was in that car accident as well, and he actually severely injured his neck. But Helen was regretfully was killed in the accident. And as a result of the accident, all of her worldly goods was inherited by Martin Bryant, which consisted of about 2 houses and all of the assets, which accumulated to more than $550,000. So he was made very well off, and he thought his life was going to be a lot better. However, things weren't. Not many people, recognized him for who he was. And he went on a lot of holidays, trying to, get girlfriends and all that. He did have a couple of girlfriends, but nothing came to fruition. And with Martin Bryant, he had, two devastating impacts upon his life. And they actually literally happened, right after each other. So, first thing what happened to him was really negative was the death of his friend, Helen. And then soon afterwards, his father committed suicide. And they were very, very close. And with his father, I think he also inherited things from, his father as well, which was a further $250,000. So all up, he pretty much inherited within, a few months, approximately about $900,000. And, he became very, well off. And because he had a couple of houses, he could have easily, lived on the rent coming in. He could have easily done that. However, he didn't do that. And in late 1995, he actually became suicidal. Because he thought everyone was going against him, and he's had enough. And he started to drink a lot more, and it increased prior to the crimes. 12 weeks up to the massacre, Martin Bryant actually thoroughly fought out the crimes. And in the morning of the 28th of April 1996, Martin Bryant said goodbye to his girlfriend, and what was really unusual for him that particular morning, he set the alarm clock at 6 a.m. Which, even according to Martin Bryant, was out of character for him. And the thing was, he was planning that day, and he was planning for some time, and he actually, on the calendar, actually circled the 28th of April. He said goodbye to his girlfriend and told her that he was going to see her on Monday. However, I don't think he saw her on Monday, but he could have. But it would have been a different, in a different environment, if you know what I'm saying. And on that day, he got his car and put a surfboard on his roof. And the day prior to this crime, he also bought a big gym bag which he made sure was large enough to hold his weaponry. So there was a lot of planning and a lot of thoughts going, into this particular crime. And for a little while, Martin Bryant had a dispute with David and Nolene. She was also nicknamed Sally, who owned a bed and breakfast which was called a Seascape, and Martin Bryant tried a couple of times to buy it. And on this particular day, when they refused, they didn't want to sell, he ended up shooting and killing them. At around 1:10 p.m, Martin Bryant got in the line at the toll booth at the entrance of the historical site. He paid the entry fee and proceeded to the car park near the Broad Arrow Cafe, near the water's edge. The site security manager told him to park with the other cars because that area was reserved for camper vans and the car park was very busy on that particular day. Bryant moved his car to another area and sat in his car for a few moments. He then moved his car back near the water outside the cafe. The security manager saw him go up to the cafe carrying a sport-type bag and a video camera, but ignored him. Bryant went into the cafe and purchased a meal, which he ate on the deck outside. He attempted to start conversations with people about the lack of wasps in the area, and there were not being as many Japanese tourists as usual. He appeared to be very nervous and quite regularly looked back to the car park and into the cafe. After he finished his meal, he put his hand in his bag and took out a Colt AR-15 SP1 carbine with a Colt scope and a 30-round magazine attached. The bag contained, among other things, the knife he had used to stab Martin. It is believed that Colt magazine was partially emptied from the shootings at Seascape. The cafe was very small, with the tables very close together. It was particularly busy that particular day, with many people waiting for the next ferry. The following events happened extremely quickly. Bryant took aim from his hip and pointed the rifle at Mo Yi Ing, who was also named William, and So Ling Chang, who were visiting from Malaysia and were seated at a table beside Bryant. He shot them at close range, killing both instantly. Bryant then fired a shot at Mick Sargent, grazing his scalp and knocking him to the floor. He fired a fourth shot that killed Sargent's girlfriend, 21-year-old Kate Elizabeth Scott, by hitting her in the back of the head. A 28-year-old New Zealand winemaker, Jason Winter, had been helping the busy cafe. As Martin Bryant turned towards Winter's wife, Joanne, and the 15-month-old son, Mitchum Winter threw a serving tray at Bryant in an attempt to distract him. Joanne Winter's father pushed his daughter and grandson to the floor under the table. 44-year-old Anthony Nightingale stood up after the sound of the first shots, but had no time to move. Nightingale yelled, "No, not here," as Bryant pointed the weapon at him. As Nightingale leaned forward, he was fatally shot through the neck and spine. The next table had held a group of 10 friends, but some had just left the table to return their meal trays and visit the gift shop. Bryant fired one shot that killed Kevin Vincent Sharp, who was 68. The second hit Walter Bennett, 66, passed through his body and struck Raymond John Sharp, 67, Kevin Sharp's brother, killing both of them. The three had their back towards Bryant and were unaware what was happening. They at first believed someone was letting off firecrackers. One of them made the comment, "That's not funny," after hearing a few shots, not realizing that they were for real. The shots were all close range, with the gun at or just inches away from the back of their heads. Gerald Broom and Gay Fider and her husband John were all struck by bullet fragments but survived. Brian then turned towards Tony, Sarah, Kristen and Andrew Mills. Both men stood up at the noise of the initial shots, but had no time to move away. Andrew Mills was shot in the head. Tony Kristen was also shot from about 2 meters away, also in the head, but had managed to push his wife away prior to being shot. Sarah Kristen was apparently not seen by Bryant, as she was under the table at the time. Thelma Walker and Pamela Law were injured by fragments before being dragged to the ground by their friend Peter Croswell, as they sheltered underneath the table. Also injured by the fragments from those shots, was Patricia Baker. It was only then that the majority of the people in the cafe began to realise what was happening, and that the shots were not for reenactment at a particular, historical site. At this point, there was great confusion, with many people not knowing what to do, as Bryant was near the main exit. Bryant just moved a few meters and began shooting at tables where Graham Collier and Carol Launton and her daughter Sarah were seated. Collier was severely injured in the jaw, nearly choking to death on his own blood. Sarah Lawton ran towards her mother, who had moved between tables. Karen Lawton threw herself on top of her daughter. Brian shot Carolyn Lofton in the back. Her eardrum was ruptured by the muzzle blast from the gun going off beside her ear. She survived her injuries, but learned after she came out of surgery that despite her efforts, Sarah had been fatally shot in the head. Bryant pivoted around and shot Murphy Howard, who was seated. The bullet passed through him, through a cafe window of the cafe, and hit the table on the outside balcony. Bryant quickly followed up with a shot to the neck. Howard's wife, Mary. Bryant then leaned over at the vacant baby stroller and pointed the gun at her head and shot her a second time. Both of the Howard's injuries were fatal. Bryant was near the exit, preventing others from attempting to run past him. and escape. Bryant moved across the cafe towards the gift shop area. There was an exit door through the display area to the outside balcony, but it was locked and could only be opened with a key. As Bryant moved, Robert Elliott stood up. He was shot in the arm and in the head, left slumping against the fireplace but still alive. All of these events, Martin Bryant fired 17 shots and killed 12 people. In the gift shop, Martin Bryant moved through the gift shop area, giving many people time to hide under tables behind shop displays. He fatally shot 2 local women who worked in the gift shop, 17-year-old Nicole Burgess in the head and 26-year-old Elizabeth Howard in the arm and chest. Corey Lever and Vera Jarry hid behind a Hessian burlap screen with others. Lever's husband Dennis was fatally shot in the head. Pauline Masters, Vera Jarry's husband Ron, and Peter and Carolyn Nash had attempted to escape through the locked door but could not. Peter Nash lay down on top of his wife to hide her from Bryant. Bryant moved into the gift shop area where several people who were trapped with nowhere to go were crouching down in the corner. Gwen Nearder, trying to make the door open, tried to make it to the door, was shot in the head and killed. Martin Bryant saw movement in the cafe and moved near the front door. He shot at a table and hit Peter Croswell, who was hiding under it, in the buttocks or in the bottom. Jason Winter, hiding in the gift shop, thought Martin Bryant had left the building and made a comment about it to people near him before moving out into the open. Martin Bryant saw him with Winter starting no just prior to being shot, the bullet hitting his hand, neck and chest. A second shot to the head provided a fatal shot to Winter. Fragments from those shots struck American tourist Dennis Olson, who had been hiding with his wife Mary and Winter. Dennis Olson suffered fragment injuries to his hand, scalp, eye and chest but survived. He then shot Ronald Jarry through the neck and Peter Nash and Pauline Masters, killing the 3 of them. He did not see Carolyn Nash, who was lying under her husband. Bryant aimed his gun at an unidentified Asian man, but the rifle magazine was now empty. Bryant then quickly moved to the gift shop counter, where he reloaded his rifle, leaving an empty magazine on the service counter, and he left the building. In total, with the cafe, the gift shop, he fired 29 times. He killed 20 people and wounded 12 more. So at the moment, his kill count was 22 people at this particular time. He then moved to the car park. There was a number of coaches outside with lines of people, many of whom began to hide in the buses or in nearby buildings. Others did not understand the situation, which was going on. Some people believed that this was some sort of historical reenactment happening and moved towards the area. Ashley John Law, a site employee, was moving people away from the cafe into an information centre when Bryant fired at him from 50 to 100 metres or 50 to 110 yards away. The bullets missed Law and hit some trees nearby. Bryant then moved towards the coaches. One of the coach drivers, Royce Thompson, was shot in the back as he was moving along the passenger side of the coach. He fell to the ground and was able to crawl, then roll under the bus to safety, but he later died of his injuries. Bridget Cook was trying to guide a number of people down between the buses and along the jetty area to cover. Martin Bryant moved to the front of the bus and walked across the next coach. People had quickly moved from this coach towards the back end in an attempt to seek cover. As Martin Bryant walked around it, he saw people scrambling to hide and shot at them. Bridget Cook was shot in the right thigh, causing the bone to fragment. The bullet lodging there. A coach driver in Makui was hit by fragments of Miss Cook's bone. Both were able to escape and survived. Martin Bryant then quickly moved around another coach and fired another group of people. Winifred Applin ran to get to cover behind another coach, was fatally shot in the side. Another bullet grazed Yvonne Lockery's cheek, but she was able to enter one of the coaches and she survived. Some of the people then started moving away from the car park towards the jetty, but someone shouted that Martin Bryant was heading that way, so they tried to double back around the coaches to where Bridget Cook had been shot. Bryant doubled back to where Jeanette and Neville Quinn, who owned the wildlife park on the east coast of Tasmania, were beginning to move towards Mason's Cove and away from the buses. Martin Bryant then shot Jeanette Quinn in the back, where she fell unable to move, near Royce Thompson. He then continued along the car park as people tried to escape along the shore. Doug Hutchinson was attempting to get into a coach when he was shot in the arm. He quickly ran away from the coach and then along the shore to the jetty and he hid. Bryant then returned to his vehicle, which was just past the coaches, and changed weapons to a self-loaded rifle. He then fired at Denise Cromer, who was near the penitentiary ruins, and gravel flew up in front of her as the bullets hit the ground. Bryant then got in his car and sat there for a few moments before getting out again and going back to the coaches. Some people were taking cover behind cars and car park, but because of the elevation, Bryant could see them, and the cars did not provide much cover. When they realised Bryant had seen them, they ran into the bush. He fired several shots. At least one hit a tree. At least one of the bullets hit a tree behind which someone was taking cover, but no one was hit. Martin Bryant moved back towards the buses, where Jeanette Quinn lay injured from the earlier shooting. He shot her in the back, then left her. She later died from her injuries. He then went on to one of the coaches and fired at Elva Gaylord, who was hiding inside, hitting her arm and chest, killing her. As an adjacent coach, Gordon Francis saw what happened and moved down the aisle to try to shut the door of the coach he was on. He seen Martin Bryant shoot from the opposite coach. He survived but needed 4 major operations. Neville Quinn's husband of Janet, had escaped to the jetty area, but he later returned to find his wife, as he was forced to leave her. He was forced to leave her when Bryant shot her, and he was spotted by Martin Bryant, and he pointed the gun at Neville Quinn's face, and Neville begged him, saying, "No one gets away from." Oh no, sorry. Martin Bryant said to Neville, "No one gets away from me," and he pulled the trigger. The bullet missed his head, but hit his neck, momentarily, paralyzing him. Quinn managed to find his wife, although she later died in his arms, and he actually survived. He then fired at James Bosco, a U.S. citizen, hitting a nearby car. Bosco had been attempting to film the shooter, and his kill count now is 26 people killed and 18 injured. He then got back to his car and went into his car, and he drove it back to the toll booth. There was a number of people wanted to go into the site. Along the way, he saw Nanette Mikak and her children, Madeline, who was 3 years old, and Alana, who was 6. Nanette was carrying Madeline and Alana was running slightly ahead. By this point, they had run approximately 600 meters or 660 yards from the car park. Bryant opened his door and slowed down. McCack moved towards the car, apparently thinking he was offering them help in escaping. Several more people witnessed this from further down the road. Someone recognized him as the gunman and yelled at him that it was him. Martin then stepped out of his car, put his hand on Nanette Mimic's shoulder, and told her to get on her knees. She did so, saying, "Please don't hurt my babies." Bryant shot her in the temple, killing her. Next, he fired at Madeline, which hit her in the shoulder, then shot her fatally through the chest. Bryant shot twice at Alana as she ran behind a tree, missing. He then walked up behind her and pressed the barrel of the gun into her neck and fired, killing her instantly. And he did that out of spite because he actually thought it was very funny. And it's just to show how cold this guy is. He then fired at some people who were hiding in the bush, but missed. Having seen the murders of children, some people further up the road began running. They told drivers of cars coming down the road to go back. The people thought that Martin would head up the road, so instead they proceeded on foot down a dirt side of the road to hide in the bush. The cars were reversed up the road to the toll booth. Janet drove up to the toll booth where there were several vehicles, and blocked a 1980 BMW 7 Series owned by Marie Rose Nixon. Inside were Nixon, the driver Russell James Pollard, and the passenger Helen and Robert Graham Slasum. An argument with Robert Salzman ensued, and Martin Bryant took out his rifle and shot Salzman at point-blank range, killing him. Pollard emerged from the BMW and went towards Martin Bryant, who shot him in the chest, killing him. More cars then arrived, but seeing this, the drivers were quickly able to reverse back up the road. Bryant then moved to the BMW and pulled Nixon and Helen Chesman from the car and shot them dead, dragging the bodies onto the road. He then transferred the ammunition, handcuffs, and the AR-15 rifle and the fuel container to the BMW. Mary Nixon, Russell Pollard, Helen Salzman, and Robert Salzman are the people Martin Bryant was charged with killing at the toll booth. A driver, Graham Southern, was hit with glass as he tried to back away from Martin Bryant. At this point, he killed 33 people and injured 19. He then, left Port Arthur and went to a service station. And when he went to the service station, he pulled up against another car, forcing Glenn Pierce to go in his boot, or go into the boot of the car. And then he shot through the windows, killing the driver. And he drove off with the hostage. Now the death toll is 34. And he went back to the seascape, where there was a long time where the police were trying to convince him to turn himself in, to release the hostage, and he requested for an army helicopter to take him out, or, take him, flying away to somewhere else. However, the police didn't go along with it, and somewhere along the line he shot his last victim. He shot Glenn Pierce because he actually went back to the same house. He went back, and he soon set the house on fire, and he sustained burns, and he tried to escape through the confusion. However, it didn't work out too well because he got arrested. And he was sentenced, he's still alive today, and he was sentenced for about a couple of 100 years. So he's never going to be released from jail. And the thing is, with Martin Bryant, he was laughing right through the investigation. Like, he was laughing, he pretty much thought it was a big joke. When they interviewed him, they said, "Do you realise that you killed children?" And he just continued to laugh. He thought like I said, once again, he thought it was very funny. And he actually said in an interview that he thought that they were going to give him a simple slap on the wrist and let him go. Somehow that did not work out for him, and I wonder why. And also he believed that he was going to be very popular in prison. Once again, I agree with him there. He's going to be very popular, alright. Just not in the way he thinks of it. He thinks popularity means he's going to be, have plenty of friends in there. I mean, good friends. Oh yeah, he's going to get friends, alright. There's two types of people what prisoners don't like. Pedophiles and any crimes dealing in regards to children. Martin Bryant had killed children. The youngest victim was only 3 years of age. Alright, so this, you can say this video is in memory for the people who was killed in this massacre. I'm going to give you their names and their ages. But people, as you just heard, there are children on this list. Alright. Winifred Joyce Aplin, 58. Walter John Bennett, 66. Nicole Louise Burgess, 17. So Ling Chang, 32. Elva Rhonda Gallard, 48. Zoe Ann Hall, 28. Elizabeth Jane Howard, 26. Mary Elizabeth Howard, 57. Mervyn John Howard, 55. John Noel Jarry, 71. Tony Vadavulu Kiston, 51. Leslie Dennis Lever, 53. Sarah Kate Lofton, 15. David Martin, 72. Nolene Sally Joyce Martin, 69. Pauline Virginia Masters, 49. Alana Louise McCack, 6. Madeline Grace McCack, 3. Nanette Patricia McCack, 36. Andrew Bruce Mills, 39. Peter Brenton Nash, 32. Gwenda Joan Neander, 67. William Xianging, 48. Anthony Nightingale, 44. Mary Rose Nixon, 60. Glenroy Pierce, 35. Russell James Pollard, 72. Jeanette Kathleen Quinn, 50. Helen Maria Slazum, 50. Robert Graham Slazum, 57. Kate Elizabeth Scott, 21. Kevin Vincent Sharp, 68. Raymond John Sharp, 67. Royce William Thomason, 59. Jason Bernard Winter, 29. So yeah, and so that's the memory of those people who sadly lost their lives on that day in 1996. And because of this act, laws were changed. There's a lot of strict gun laws. Like in Australia, sadly, finding a gun is actually quite hard in Australia. We do have gun shops, but they are very, very rare. And we've got very strict gun laws. And right after this, our Prime Minister at the time, I think it was John Howard, pretty much, ordered anyone with certain weaponry, pretty much, with the semi-automatic rifles, were ordered to surrender their weaponry. And they were destroyed. It was a mass destruction of weaponry. So a lot of people, lost their guns, and they said that that's probably the reason why we're not the United States today with gun laws. Our gun laws are very, very strict. And it had this massacre to awaken us to the threat of gun laws. The threat of, gun violence, I mean. And as you see, this is, you could say this one is a little bit tricky, is it a mass murder? Is it a spree killer? If you ask me personally, I think this is a spree killer. Because he killed, then he moved on. He killed, moved on, and kill, move on. And usually when it's kill, move, that is the action of that is the action of a spree killer. If he just stopped the people at Port Arthur, at the cafe, then he will be a mass murderer. But because he killed before it and afterwards, like he killed, moved, kill, moved, then he is a spree killer because he was outside of the grounds. So you literally, killed, then he moved into Port Arthur, killed, and he killed as he was leaving, and, kill. So it was kill, move, kill, move. And like I said, that's what, mass murders. Because when it gets to mass murders, like, for example, like with Columbine, they killed in one part of the school, then move on to another part of the school, kill, move, kill, move. But the school is one place. They do not, like, say, shot their parents, then gone to school, shot a whole heap of people, and then left school and shot more people. Because if they did that, then yes, they're a serial killer. But because they had one location, which was the school, that means that it is a mass murder. But because this was multiple scenes, this was a spree killer. If you like the channel, please like and subscribe. Have a great day, and blessed be.